Welcome back to the Joke Zero podcast, where we talk about all things indie filmmaking. And if you have listened to all of these episodes, or if you're just tuning in, we are focusing on Joke Zero's first ever feature film, Plan B, which you can watch now on Amazon, on Apple, on Fandango, wherever you like to rent or buy movies. And throughout the entire season, we have talked to a bunch of the actors who are in the movie, some of our crew members, and people who work behind the camera. And today we are flipping the roles a little bit. We've got our producer, writer, director, Brandon Tamburri on, and he's going to be interviewing me, the star of the actual star of the movie, Anna Roisman. I would interview myself, but I think that would get a little boring, right? I mean,
I'm happy to step in on this one. It's been very fun watching you interview people for all of these episodes,
thanks.
reminiscing on great times. And
I've had a blast. I've really had a blast. Thank you for bringing me on to this. I wasn't sure at first if I had the capacity, if I could do it. And I was just like, I've met so many cool people. We've had so many like fun, wild stories from people that we just didn't expect. And I really think this is like, I don't know. I love the podcast.
I'm super excited as well. You were an amazing host.
Thanks.
And I think one thing that's fun is we talked throughout really the whole podcast. You kind of mentioned to some of our guests that you were in the movie. You played a day player role. And I think it will be really fun to kind of just hear more about that because we never really got the full story. And this is the episode where we're going to do it.
Wow. I'm so honored. I really am. To talk about being a day player is just something I love to do. So
Yeah, and I think this might be my big break as well as a host. I kind of took the back
this is
seat and was
it.
the producer, but yeah, for anyone watching who is interested in hiring me to be a host, I am available.
Yeah, we are both available for hire, I guess.
Yeah, so in that case, I don't think anyone would want to hire me. So hire Anna
No.
as the host. I hired Anna as the host for this, and she did an amazing job.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I guess just to kind of start it off, like you asked everybody else, how did you get started in the entertainment industry? Like what led you into this crazy world?
I was born a star. It's really just an easy story. No, I knew from a very young age that I wanted to be a famous actress, movie star, singer, influenced by Mariah Carey, Bette Midler. As I grew up, I was like, oh, Chelsea Handler. Like some of my heroes are across the board because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be in the entertainment industry. I knew I was an entertainer. And then I started doing like theater growing up. I was a theater kid. I loved going to Broadway shows. I did a lot of plays and shows, in the Philadelphia area where I grew up. And then I went to college, not for acting, if you can believe.
Wow.
I know. I know. It's still like weird because most people meet me and they're like BFA in acting. And I'm like, no, actually, no. I come from a family. My mom is a dentist. My dad is a lawyer. They are not in the industry at all. I begged them to take me out of school and make me a movie star. I got to do one movie when I was in high school. I was like a featured extra in a movie. That was super fun. And it was filming in Staten Island, but they cast like people in Philly. And I was just like, I got cast and I was like, oh my God, this is my break. I don't have to go back to high school. I was like a freshman or something. I was young.
And what was that? Sorry to interrupt, but what was the project?
Oh yeah, it was called Little Manhattan, and it was starring Cynthia Nixon and Bradley Whitford. I played like it was a flashback scene, so I played Cynthia Nixon's best friend. I don't know who it is in the movie. I should know because I played her younger. We were at a soccer game. We had a campfire scene. It was like a couple days, I think, that we got to work on it, and it was cool. It was like they put me in like '70s clothes, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm famous now. Like this is it. I didn't have any lines.
No, that sounds amazing. Did you get your SAG card from that movie?
I did not. I did not. I actually got my SAG card. You'll love this. When I first moved to New York, I worked on Gossip Girl and I played a stripper. Not like in the club stripper, like I was like a morning after. I was like the chosen one and maybe she was called it a dancer. It was a stripper. I was Chuck Stripper and it was that gave me my SAG card. But I went to school for TV production. So I only did like writing, producing, editing classes in college, which now is helpful now that I do that every day. But back then I did all the plays at college, but I was like also a TV major. So, I'm writing like Ugly Betty spec scripts and like Curb Your Enthusiasm spec scripts. And I was like, well, whatever, I'll just write my own TV show. Like that's how this will work.
Yeah, and I think that's a great transition here because you just mentioned you went to school for production and writing, and you really do so much writing. Really funny stand-up comedian. You have a one-woman
Thank you.
show. You
Thank
do
you.
hosting. Like, I'd say after college, like, what did you do? really right after college that kind of led you into actually working in the entertainment industry, assuming that the featured extra role wasn't really your big break.
It wasn't my big break, I still had to finish school, unfortunately. I moved to New York. So I interned at a casting office. I learned very quickly I did not want to work in casting. I just needed a production internship in college, but I did it in New York the summer before my final year of school. So I had a restaurant job already in New York because I worked there in the summer of my junior year. And they were like, well, when you come back, let us know, like you have a job here. So I moved to New York the day after I graduated. I went to BU in Boston, moved to New York the day after, started working at the restaurant. I was like auditioning for theater because I was like, well, I'm going to get on Broadway. I guess that's like a first step, right? But like, Broadway's not going to pay me what, the movies will pay me. Like, I don't know. I was delusional, I guess. I was like, this is what I'll do. I quickly learned I didn't really fit in at the time with the like musical theater crowd. Like I would go to these auditions, I was dressed differently. I was like, I don't have the right shoes. I didn't sit in a BFA program for 4 years, like a conservatory. I just felt out of place. So I started going, I saw some comedy shows at UCB. I was like, oh, these are like my people. Like, I get it. And I started taking classes at UCB and doing comedy shows. I wasn't doing stand up then, mostly just like sketch stuff, improv stuff. I started stand up like a couple years after that, maybe 5 or 6 years. I don't know. Not right when I first moved to New York. I didn't know that I could do it, like hold a mic and like just be funny on my own. But that's what I started doing. And I didn't really have a big break for a while. I did like little things here and there. I booked some regional theater jobs, which I was like, this is fun, but I'm not living in the city I live in. Like, but it's always helpful to be a local hire somewhere. I want to say that on this podcast. If you have family in another city and they're shooting something there, you are a local hire.
That's kind of my advice as a filmmaker as well. There's certain casting directors and producers who will put out casting calls and say they might only put it out to people living in LA or living in New York or wherever you're filming. I did all of the casting for this movie myself for Plan B, and I just put out not necessarily worldwide, but all of the US. I was like, if you want to fly to New Jersey and be a New Jersey local or drive to New Jersey, come on board.
I did it.
Yeah, local hire. Where were you coming from? Were you in New York?
I was in New York. I drove from New York. Yeah. But I have family in Philly. So I was like, oh, well, I could just like, if I work all day, I'll just go stay at my parents that night. That's an easier drive home.
Yeah, we actually had some people that like flew themselves in from LA, which I didn't necessarily know was happening until we were actually on set. And some people were like, yeah, I just flew in from LA. I was like, well, I was thinking to myself, like, we didn't cover this person's flight. Like, they really are passionate about acting. And that's just some great advice to anyone trying to make it. I did some extra work and a little, very small acting stuff when I was in college, and I was a local to Washington, D.C. I was a local to Baltimore, Maryland, New York, New Jersey, Philly, pretty much anywhere within like a 3 hour drive I work is a local for.
Yeah, it's nice. If you can crash on someone's couch and you have points to fly with or whatever, you might as well. It'll pay off eventually.
Yeah, well, you kind of touched on, you mentioned your big break a little bit, didn't really say what it was.
I didn't have.
Now you're doing some really great stuff. You have again, a one woman show. One thing I want to talk about though is you were the host of HQ Trivia, which I think some people may still be playing HQ. Maybe you're not playing HQ, but I remember.
They're not playing anymore. It ended in 2022. I ended it actually.
So you ended HQ, but what I will
Yeah.
say is when HQ first came out, this was like the biggest thing out there. I remember I was working at a production company at the time, and me and my coworkers every day at 3 p.m. or whenever it was, we would all pull out our phone and we would go on HQ and we would play. And actually were not the host when I used to play. I think you came in a little bit after the fact, but it was such a fun game, and it seemed like that really was just really a great gig for you for a while. I'd love to hear about that.
It was great. I was hosting my own show called The Unemployed Show, which I would do on Thursdays. It was a comedy talk show in my apartment. And then one day, my friend Scott Rogowski, who was the first host of HQ Trivia, I knew Scott for years. He'd done my web series. I had done his web series. Like we had just worked on a bunch of stuff together. And he called me up and he was like, I'm doing this like game show thing. I don't really know what it is, but it's like they're making me work all day. He did 2 shows a day. They would do 3 o'clock and 9 p.m. Everyone played HQ at the times that it was live because it was live. That's the thing. It was live. You could play it then. If you were late to the game, you couldn't play that day. You had to go to play the next one. And I went and auditioned and I did not get the job. I did not hear from them. I was like, ugh, I crushed. I thought I crushed. I was like, so funny. I had watched him, they were like, don't be like Scott. We want someone else, blah, blah, blah. Didn't get the job. Cut to 1 year later, I get an email and they were starting their second game, which was called HQ Words. And it was the Wheel of Fortune to the Jeopardy. It was a word puzzle game. And at the time, I was like temping at some shitty ass like company in Midtown, and it was awful. And I was like, I have to get this job. I have to get out of here right now. Like, I need this right now. And I had done other stuff. I've done bit roles on TV shows or whatever, nothing major, but I was just like, this would be so great to have a job right now. That's an entertainment job. And I got it, which was awesome. I think I went through a couple rounds of auditions and I hosted HQ Words. We were in beta and then it was a really traumatizing experience. It was a great experience, but if you know the story of HQ Trivia, it was really, my show was supposed to debut the day after our co-founder passed away suddenly, and it was like just drama. There's a documentary out now that I'm not in, but there is a podcast that I am in on The Ringer that you could go listen to. But other than that, I'm a comedian. I get to write my own scripts. I was making, I get to have my own intros, make my own jokes. I was really just they gave me a word and an answer, and I had an outline of like the flow of the show and everything, and I had to write these scripts every day. So it was like an amazing, I learned so much. It was an amazing like skill building thing for me to write a script, to have a production meeting, to go into hair and makeup, to do one rehearsal, and then to shoot it live at 9. Like it was just, I did over 500 shows. We were very laid off right before the pandemic in February of 2020. The whole company shut down. And then some secret investor brought us back magically a couple months later because a lot of the players were like, I mean, the fan base was amazing. They were like, we need it. We have the pandemic. We need it. So I was hosting then. It wasn't as frequent. It was like once a week or whatever. I did the late night show with them too, with my friend Matt Richards. We had so much fun on that because Matt and I were like comedians, like at heart first. So we would just like shoot the shit. We would drink. We would curse. Yeah, it was like HQ After Dark was like a wild time. I loved it. I have so many great memories from it. It really helped me as a host. And I miss it. It's so funny working on a film now. Like when you work on films, I'm like, wait, I get another take. Oh my God. Wow. I get takes. It's so nice to not be live.
Yeah, no, it definitely is nice. I couldn't even imagine being behind the scenes on something live. Like that's pretty crazy just to think that if you mess up, it's it's going in the show. People are seeing it.
I'm in front of 400,000 people a night. And if I say a word wrong, pronounce a word wrong, like I would hear about it on Twitter. So I would get so mad at myself. But then you kind of just learn, like, I have to throw this out. Like, people make mistakes and I have a new show tomorrow. Like, that's it. Like, forget about it. It didn't happen. You didn't say the name wrong. Maybe you did, but whatever.
Yeah, and just to hear that experience working on a show like that for everyone else listening right now, it's very difficult in the really film and entertainment industry to get like a steady job that really kept you going for over 500 episodes. Like that really is just crazy because we've talked to so many other people that are kind of bouncing around from gig to gig. Even Kate Flannery mentioned that she was still working as a waitress throughout the first season of The Office. So it really is just such an uncertain industry. And that definitely just seems like it was just such a great, kind of just like a great project to be involved with.
It was great. I mean, don't get me wrong. I didn't have like every time the numbers dipped because apps have a shelf life. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job. Like it was pretty much every month we were like, this is it. This is the end. We only have 200,000 players. Like, are they going to cancel our show? So it was a little stressful in terms of that. I did keep my job. I was a talking head at BuzzFeed at the time on a couple shows. So I would go into BuzzFeed. I'd shoot that like during the day. I'd go to HQ at night. I was still doing comedy shows when I could. It was hard because I was live every night at like 9 or 9:30, depending on trivia versus words. But I would do like an 8 p.m. comedy show. I'd take an Uber back to I'd like, go from like HQ, I'd go production meeting to my comedy show, back to HQ, do HQ, like go out, go do another spot. Like it was crazy. I don't know how we functioned like that pre-pandemic. I'm like, I think back to those nights that I just would go like zip around the city and hope that I just made my jobs on time. But yeah, you kind of have to always keep, I was still always auditioning, doing whatever I could because you never know.
That's really what you have to do to make it in this industry. You have to just make yourself available and be willing to meet people and jump into new projects.
Yeah, you really do. It's all about who you meet and who you know. You can't just sit on your ass waiting for like the right audition to come in or, writing a script and saying, "Okay, I wrote my script. Now what?" Like you can't, you have to just be proactive. It's
I totally agree. And kind of from the other side of that audition, I'm curious to hear how you got involved with Plan B. I guess I know because I was there, but how did you for the audience?
it's funny because I think I just got an audition from my agency or my manager at the time and it was one line, I think. It was or like two lines And for those, I have learned this about myself, and hopefully this helps anyone listening. The less time you spend on something, the better you actually do. If you have 40 takes of you doing one line, like you're gonna drive yourself insane trying to send it in, trying to edit. If I can do something in one take, I'm like, that's it. Like if I nail it and I'm like, you know what? I did, but I don't think I'd change anything else unless they ask you, hey, can we get a couple takes of this? Because they might not know which way they want it or, the direction of it. I honestly got an audition. I think I remember I was going out somewhere. So whenever I have somewhere to be and I already have makeup on, I'm like, oh, thank God I could just do this self-tape like right before I leave. It's like one line. And I think I just did it in like one or two takes. I really do. And I sent it in, completely forgot about it. That's the beauty of being in this industry for a long time. You audition and you forget about it unless like a big thing that you had days prepping for or something. Completely forgot about it. I remember I got an email being like, you booked it, plan B. And I was like, which one was that? Like, I didn't know. I don't think I had read the script. I think I read the script after I booked it, to be honest, because when you get a one liner, you're like, is there much I need to know about this? I'm a waitress, funny bit, and that's it.
I was just gonna say, so when you auditioned for this, like you said, maybe they sent you the script and you probably didn't read it till after. Like, did you know any of the actors on board? Did they tell you like Jamie Lee and John Heder were starring in it and would be in the scene with you?
I don't even remember. Maybe. I honestly don't think so because usually, yes, you would see that, but it's funny. I want to look in my email right now. Hold on.
Go, yeah, check it out.
Now that you're asking, Plan B.
Because I'm genuinely curious as well. Like I always would wonder when these actors show up to set, like, do they know what's going on? Like we talked to Kate Flannery, she said she had no idea that Tom Berenger was in the movie, and she just showed up and saw him. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe sometimes you get told, sometimes you don't.
Sometimes you get told. I got this audition. You'll love this. May 13th, 2022. Must be New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia local hire. I was like, great. I've also was a waitress for many years. I'm like, easy, done. And it said it, yeah, it didn't say. And honestly, I don't even have the whole script in this at least. Maybe I don't even know when I read this script.
I could have potentially just given it to you after the fact, or maybe while we were on set, you asked me, or we definitely kept in touch a little bit after filming
Yeah.
because we clearly are now doing this podcast.
They sent me 2 pages, no mention of any stars or anything. That's why I forgot. I would remember if I was like, oh, this would be great. Cause I did audition, like I remember now, like a year ago, I auditioned for something and it was like opposite Michael Keaton. And I was like, oh man, like this would be a huge scene for me to be in a scene with Michael Keaton, and you kind of like, which is always an issue for my boyfriend reading with me because I'm like, when he knows the actor who's playing this role, it's such a fucking mess when we do a tape because I'm like, don't act like Michael Keaton. Just read the lines. Don't do that. Anyway, no, I didn't know anything. And then I was excited to go to set and I had a great day on set. I walked in, I knew Jamie because I had done some stand-up shows with her. I knew her show. I knew her from Crashing, of course, and she was just like someone I like looked up to in the industry. Our paths had crossed a little bit, but I didn't really know her too well. And John Heder, obviously, I was a huge fan. And when I found out I got to do the scene with them, and then Suba, I had met a couple times doing comedy. I was like, oh my God, I get to be with like all three of these like hilarious comedians. What a fun day. And everyone was down to improv and it was fun. It was a great day. I made friends with the makeup artist. I make friends easily when I go to set. And I feel like, I like keeping in touch with people. And if you have a greght experience, like all these people are going to work on something afterwards. You never know, when you're going to meet them again or see them again or work on their podcast or whatever. So it was a fun day.
Great to hear you say that. It was super fun that day. You were on set. We had a really fun scene that you were in, and part of that as well. Like you mentioned the improv, and I really just wanted to get really for making this movie as many funny people as possible in that, really in every single room. And Jamie, obviously, great comedian. John Heder is kind of a comedy legend. Suba, I knew a little bit as well, which we talked about with her in her episode. And we actually, I forget if I told you this when you got cast. I may have, I may not have, but we definitely haven't talked about it since May 2022, probably. But we did have a very brief interaction before Plan B. Do you remember this at all? And did I mention this to you?
Oh no, now I'm gonna feel so bad. No, I was gonna say I remembered one other thing that happened that day, and that was what I thought. I was like, oh, this is why I got hired on this movie is Eric Bloomquist who worked on the film.
He was our UPM for everyone listening.
At lunch, he was like, "Can we take a selfie together? My family loves HQ. They played every game." And I was like, "Oh my God." Like I love when people come up to me about HQ because now I'm sort of like known for my impressions and my like comedy videos, which I love. But there HQ was such a special time and the fan base was amazing that it's like it's fun when people are like, "I played HQ." I'm like, "Oh, we're like in a secret club together." Like I love that. So I was like, "Oh, that's why I got hired." He probably saw my name and was like HQ. Is that what you were gonna say or no?
No, no. So Eric had nothing to do with you being cast, which is good because there's a totally different story. Which again, I maybe mentioned this to you, but there was so much going on that maybe I meant to mention this to you and never did. So
Mention it again. My brain is bad.
yeah, no, I will. So I do remember though when I told so Eric was helping out with like a lot of the booking flights and travel and things like that. And I remember sending him, not that you flew in for this, but for whatever reason I sent him your information. He was very excited. He's like, "Really? She's doing this? Like I'm such a big fan of HQ."
Oh, I love that.
So yeah, I do remember that happening, and I think I do kind of remember him taking a picture with you as well, which is great.
I'm like, John Heater's right here, right? You want a picture of me? Your family wants me? Okay.
That's great. You can tell who the true fans are.
Yeah.
So I used to do work with National Lampoon pre-starting Joke Zero,
Yes.
and one of the things that I did there, I don't even know if National Lampoon ended up releasing this, but it does exist. But I did a podcast that I produced with Morgan Miller, comedian, and you came on as a guest. And I don't think we really interacted a ton, but like I was definitely there for the recording and like edited the episodes and everything like that. So from that, I've just remembered you being on
Morgan's podcast that she was
Morgan
doing. I
podcast.
forget the name of it, but I do remember.
Yeah, so it was called Famously Dumped. I actually just checked and it is still available to listen to on all the podcast platforms. Really, it was a really fun podcast to do. Morgan and I did that in the really early COVID days.
I love Morgan.
She had a script that National Lampoon had optioned, and I was kind of assigned to, and I was really like the producer of her script that we were pitching around. And then COVID happened. We weren't really going to make her show for any time soon. And she's like, I have this podcast idea. Would you want to produce it? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And I'd say kind of unfortunately what happened with that is I ended up leaving National Lampoon like after we filmed all the episodes, but before they came out. And I was in the podcast, I'd say more from what I remember. Like we actually, like I talked a little bit more. I do actually still talk at the end of every episode, and like occasionally Morgan would kind of gesture to me. But it was a lot of fun doing that podcast. And I remembered you being a guest. And I think whenever we did that, like I looked up your comedy and you were kind of on my radar. So when your name popped up again in the audition, not that you're like I'd say your audition was very convincing as a as a one or two line waitress, but
Thank you. Yes.
really kind of going back to what I said originally, like you just want to get funny people in the room together and maybe something great could happen. Like Jamie, I knew was funny, Suba, John Heater. So for all of these, really all the day players, I just wanted to cast the funniest people possible. And I knew that you were super funny.
Thank you.
I thought maybe you could bring your own twist to the role. And yeah, then you came on and you were great. We got a really funny scene out of it.
That was a really fun scene. Yeah. And also now that I'm thinking back, I'm like, oh my God, did I tell my like big breakup story? You knew so much more information about me.
So to be honest, it was a really weird time of like peak COVID, and I kind of like I don't want to say I blocked it out of my memory.
Okay, good.
I definitely don't remember, but it is still available for people that want to go hear it on Spotify or the podcast ones.
Brandon's like, I can't believe you did that to your ex-boyfriend.
I don't remember any of the breakup stories, but it was fun kind of hearing about them and working on that podcast.
That's so funny. I'm sorry I didn't remember that. And I don't think you mentioned that to me on set.
Yeah, I probably planned to, and I was just doing so much. I was directing the movie. I was also the lead producer and the only producer on set, so it just had a lot going on. And I guess you were too busy taking pictures with the crew members.
You bring a celebrity on set, it's like you're not going to have that much time with her, It's really busy. It was fun.
It was a lot of fun, and this episode I think was a lot of fun as well.
Yeah.
Kind of, I'd say before we get going, like, is there anything that you're really working on now that you want to talk about or plug?
Yeah, I have a podcast called Big Wigs. Episodes come out every Thursday. It's a weekly podcast. It's a comedy podcast. We do a lot of pop culture, hot takes and whatnot. And then we get our wigs on and do celebrity impressions, which I'm known for on Instagram. So if you guys are a fan of my Steve, I do Steve from Sex and the City. Miranda, that's the whole impression. So come check me out or follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Anna Roisman. And I can't wait to walk the red carpet for the Plan B premiere and star in Plan C. So big plans ahead, Brandon. I'm really
I'm excited for Plan C as well. It seems like a lot of people want it, so hopefully it just does happen. For anyone listening, if anyone wants to make a Plan C, I'm totally down. If anyone wants to make another movie with me producing or directing and Anna starring in it, we're available and interested.
we're marketing ourselves now. It's beautiful. Great. Thank you so much though for having me on.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for hosting all of these episodes. I'm glad that the audience finally got to hear your story after you were asking all of these other wonderful cast and crew members their stories. And yeah, just to
Oh,
finish
I was
this
gonna
off.
let you. I thought you were gonna end it there. I
No,
was like,
yeah, I was thinking you would end it, but
oh,
I will
you want me
certainly
to
end
end
it.
it? Add this in the fight to end it. I don't.
Go for it.
Okay, Brandon, thank you for letting me end it. I am the host of this podcast. Anna, thank you so much for coming on. Brandon, wow, what an amazing producer. This was so much fun. Guys, everybody go watch Plan B. Follow all these people who have been guests on our show, hire them or watch their movies. And if you're making an indie film, hey, good luck to you and hopefully you learned something from this podcast.